welcome to episode 69 of the YarnderWoman podcast. My name is Melinda. You can find me as YarnderWoman on Instagram and Ravelry. Today is the 17th of February 2018 and I am coming to you as always from Perth in Western Australia. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you are having a lovely drink of beverage of choice and you've got some knitting or you're on your commute, whatever it is you're doing. I hope you are going to have some lovely time with me because I hope to have some lovely time with you. So today I've got several WIPs to show you and a finished object one, as well as some chat about some cows and some prizes. And I'm also going to talk about some of the books I've been reading and listening to, mostly about the self-improvement topics that I briefly mentioned last episode, and a few people said they'd be interested in hearing. So I've got timestamps down below on YouTube and they're also in the show notes, depending on where you're coming to find this video. And the show notes, if you're interested, can be found at www.yarnderwoman.blogspot.com.au. There's always cross-pollination between all the sources, so there's links to everything either from the YouTube video, from the show notes, or there's also an episode thread in the Ravelry group, which you can find by searching YarnderWoman podcast in the groups tab on Ravelry. Do come and join us if you haven't already. So let's get on with the show and we'll start by broaching the subject. So this is one of two little knitting brooches that I have, and they're some of my favourites for obvious reasons. They're both cute and they have knitting. They are from Hannah Letters on Etsy, and she's also on Instagram, so I'll put all the links in. She makes the most incredible detailed felt brooches. I believe she might have just brought out a crochet version as well, so the yarn has a little crochet hook instead of the knitting needles, so I will be sure if I can find that one to link as well. I have several of her brooches, just incredible craftsmanship, and yeah, they just bring a little bit of knitting whimsy. You may also note, and I'll just put in some video here of the whole shirt. I got podcast shirts, yay! So, that's not flattering, yeah. So you can get those at Redbubble, where I've shown you the mug before. Actually, here it is. Matching shirt and mug, but you can get the shirts in all different colours. So I'll put the link to Redbubble if you're interested. You can get all sorts of types of things. The money that you spend for the item, most of it goes to Redbubble, but of course the designer, being my partner Damien, gets his money as well. So that's a little way you can support the podcast if you are interested and if you would like some YarnderWoman bling. It's not really bling, is it? Stuff. In any case, let's get on and I'll show you what I finished this week. So these are not socks, there's no heel, they're actually fingerless gloves and they're very long. And if you were watching the podcast in July 2016, you would have seen when these were originally a whip. So there you go, very long, almost elbow length on me. I was going to say I have short arms. I don't think I have short arms, I have short legs. But anyway, my point being, you know, they not necessarily be the same length on whomever receives them. But what I'm going to do with these is pass them on to a charity. So these, as I said, were cast on in July 2016. They were originally socks, and you can see they do quite nicely for arm warmers because they're bigger at the top here. You can see here there's a decrease, and then there might have been one more decrease along the way. I can't remember, but I think I had possibly there. So I think I cast on, you know, I can't even remember, and my Ravelry page did not tell me. But anyway, I cast on more here, decreased a bit, either increased or decreased there, whatever it was that I did, all the way down. So July 2016, they started out as socks. Now, this is the Socks That Rock base from Blue Moon Fibre Arts. And I think you can even see, maybe I can because I know what it is, but it's a very tightly twisted yarn. Actually, here I'll show you because I haven't snipped off the ends. So it's, I'd say more of a sport than a fingering, but it's quite sturdy and it's very tightly twisted, so it's a very nice twist. And the base is called Socks That Rock, so, you know, people knit socks out of them. So I knit a pair of socks for Damien probably, I don't know, 2011, 2012, something, out of the Socks That Rock heavyweight base, which I think would be more like a DK kind of a width, heavyweight. Weight. And I think that was even before we moved into this house, so, which is coming up on 6 years ago. So it was way before then. But when we moved in here, we have tiled floor, which we didn't have in the previous house we lived in. And after a while of living here, Damien just sort of said, I've got something I have to tell you. And he just showed me the socks, and the entire heel had just torn away. So even though it's a high twist yarn, the base is referencing socks, and I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of luck with the socks because, you know, in days of old, socks didn't necessarily have, well, they didn't have nylon in them, but I think this is still merino yarn, and as I said, I'm sure a lot of other people have great success with wearing the socks, but on our tiles, they just rip away, and our tiles tend to tear up any socks. I remember when shuffling dances were in, my two-step kids would get right into them, and wearing commercial socks, there'd be bits of sock flying everywhere as they shuffled on the tiles. So it's just not meant to be in my house. So if you're going to shuffle, don't do it on my floors. All of that to say, when I started knitting these, the colourway is called Drusilla, which, if you're a fan of Buffy or know about Buffy, is the name of one of the vampires. And in July 2016, or June 2016 it would have been, at the Supernova Comic Convention, James Masters, who played Spike on Buffy, another vampire, came along. And you may remember, if you're watching back then, I went to his concert because he's a musician. I had a photo taken with him and I got his autograph, so I was quite pleased. And I got him to quote Shakespeare at his talk because I know he really loves Shakespeare, so it was swoon-worthy altogether. Anyway, so I had cast these on to work on at the convention, and I was thinking, I'm just going to make them into socks, you know, I'll just be careful, I won't wear them on the tiles, whatever. Then I believe I got down to, I think maybe it was about ish there on both of the socks, and then put them away. I can't even remember why. In my Ravelry notes, I don't have, you know, putting in hibernation to do something else, you know. I just stopped. And I think perhaps I was up to where I wanted to put the heel in, and I was going, I don't know now if I want to use this yarn on the foot. So I think they just got put away. They got, you know, lost in the whips pile, and there they have lingered. But because at the moment I'm going through all my stash and my project bags, I found all my whips recently and I pulled these out. And I was looking at them and thinking again, you know, I definitely think I don't want to do them as socks. And then I thought, what can I do? And because they had that increase, I tried them on my arm and I thought, aha. So I turned them into the fingerless mitts. And the pattern is, I think it's Happily Ever After by Susan B. Anderson. It's a free pattern. I've used it for fingerless mitts many times before. And as I said, it's free, so it's not giving anything away. To make the thumb hole, you just, so you're working in the round up until whatever point you want to put in your thumb hole. Then you just work back and forth for however many rows, so knitting and purling. And then you rejoin in the round, keep going, do your ribbing, etc. So very simple, very effective, and I really love the pattern. I can't remember if the pattern tells you to slip a stitch or if I've just started doing that, but either way, I slip a stitch on the first stitch of every round, and you can definitely tell it's sort of rolling in, which is good because that sort of gives it the look, but I don't know if you can measure. You can see these stitches are so much bigger than those. This is the side where the purling started. So yes, my pearls are definitely a bit bigger. It's sort of evened out in the texture. so that wasn't a problem. But yeah, it's really good. On the base, I did a 1x1 twisted rib, but I decided I wanted to do a 2x2 at the top just to make it that much stretchier. And it's not to say 1x1 can't be stretchy, but in terms of the twisted stitches and whatever, I just knew that 2x2 was very stretchy, so I wanted to make sure there was enough give. And what I did for the cast off, I did the Jenny Surprisingly Stretchy bind off for the stretch. But I know that when I've done that in the past on ribbing, I'm not a fan of how that bind off looks on the pearl stitches. I'm sure there's probably a way to make it look neat, but I've not come across it yet. So what I did instead was, when I'd done the ribbing I wanted to do, I then did one row of stockinette on its own, then did the bind off. And so that meant that the whole bind off was on knit stitches, and I think it's quite nice. It's given it that sort of nice sort of edging rib. So I'm really pleased with these. As I said, they're going to go to charity, I think, because it's such a tight twist yarn, and I did them on 2.5mm needles, so it's quite a tight gauge. That's because originally I wanted it to be socks, but I think that means it's going to be really hard wearing, so I think that'll be something quite perfect for charity giving. It's the dark colours, it's nice tight weave, and very warm. When I was knitting on them, it was living in this awesome Star Wars Ray bag that was made just for me by my lovely friend Mel, who is Dubai Mel, who's given us some other bags for the podcast in the past, and I was having a very nice red moment, so that was lovely as well. Now this yarn was really nostalgic to work with. I think Blue Moon Fibre Arts might have been the first, if not one of the first, but I'm pretty sure it would be the first yarns that I bought online. So back in, I don't know what it would have been, 2010, 2011, I heard of them through the Yarn Harlot blog, and that was before I even knew about Etsy, I think. Did Etsy even exist then? I don't know, but that was very much the beginnings of my yarny online and blogs and all sorts. I don't think I knew what podcasts were at that stage. So yeah, Blue Moon Fibre Arts has a little special place in my heart. So when I was knitting it, I was like, oh, that's right. And the colourway Drusilla, I think I'd had some once, and then it was only like a special colourway. And then on the Blue Moon Fibre Arts blog, every so often the dyer would ask people for colourways they'd like to bring back. And then she did a thing where for like a weekend or a certain number of day period, you could order any of those colourways that people had requested. So I've bought several skeins in various weights of this colourway, some of which I still have in my stash. I've also knit a shawl out of this before. It was the Mackay shawl by Mel Ski, who was, I think at that time, the Single Handed Knits podcast. Now she's changed to, I can't remember off the top of my head. Mel, what did you change your podcast to? Goodness me, that's terrible. But Mel's had a lot happening in her life and she's been moving. So the most wonderful Instagram feed, Mel Ski. And yeah, so this yarn also reminds me of Mel because I did my very first mystery knit along with her for her Mackay shawl, which is just beautiful. So yeah, lots of lovely feelings, which I think was nice to put into knitting something that's going to go for charity. So yes, those are my one and only finished object, but I did work on a lot of other whips, so I'll show you those now. So this project, I had this living in my Tangerine Designs love bag, which I use at any time of year, but for February I thought it was a good excuse to bring it out. It's a project which I guess technically might have been finished, but now I've put it back to being a whip. So this is a little baby hat, and it's based on the Rubies in My Pocket pattern by Sally Jane Cameron. So I haven't done the pattern on there because I just wanted to use up as much of the yarn as I could. Now I've still got quite a bit left, which is why I've just pulled out the needles, because I was thinking I'd just finish it there, but because there's quite a bit left, I could make it a bit taller. But I guess my concern is if a baby's head fits that circumference, is it going to want to be that much taller? I don't think babies can really benefit from a slouchy beanie, when they're lying on their backs. So I'm not sure about that. Maybe a few more we'll see. But in any case, it's very cute. That is using the Knit Picks Chroma Twist yarn in the, what's the colourway called? Red Velvet, I think, yes. And I've made previously a larger hat, so this was just what was left of the skein, so it's really good to use it up, which is another reason I want to do a few more rounds perhaps before the decreases. And then if there's any left, I can use that for like wrapping presents or something, because it looks quite nice. Or, you know, a few rounds on something else, who knows, I will use it up. But anyway, that was my first, you know, whip that nearly wasn't but is back to being a whip. And another hat. This is also based on the Rubies in My Pocket pattern, and I didn't mean to not do the pattern on this. I just kind of kept knitting around and then went, oh, that's right, oh well, it's plain now. So there's also a slight variation because I started doing the ribbing, and then after a few rounds I decided I didn't want to do ribbing anymore. So I've just, I think maybe I did 2 or 3 rounds, but I've just folded it up so it sort of folds and a bit of a round at the back. It's not a style that I would wear, but this is going to be for charity, and I figure there are lots of people with lots of different tastes, so hopefully this will find a happy home with someone. I'm holding 2 yarns together. They're both Knit Picks in the Swish base. One is worsted and one is DK. I did not realise that when I got them out of my stash. I thought they were both worsted, but it has not made any difference at all, so it's all good. Oh, the colours were on there as well, so Marble Heather and Amethyst Heather. And I'd obviously used a little bit of the amethyst. I think it was when I was knitting a hat for the Yarnder Teen. I'd used a whole ball of the amethyst and then I needed a little bit more. It was when I was making the Kit Kat hat by Andre Knits. So as you can see here, there's already, you know, not much at all left on the purple, but there's a bit more on the grey. So my thinking is that I will just keep knitting until I run out of the purple, or I will aim to bind off with enough to still have them both together, because I think I've done a previous hat in this pattern. I think it was in, I showed it in episode 66 or around that area, where I'd used 2 yarns together and then I'd run out of one, and I finished off in just the one colour, and I think that worked fine with the colours I used then, because they were like a grey and a beige, so they matched quite nicely, so it made quite a nice effect. Whereas I think on this, if I went and just had hat in just grey, I think it might look a little bit too stark. So I'm going to keep knitting until I can bind off with both colours, and then if I have some left that's enough for a pom-pom, I will put a grey pom-pom on top, because my pom-pom maker has arrived. I mentioned last time that I'd ordered one, but I haven't tried it out yet, so more on pom-poms later when the news is at hand. So as you can see, I'm using double points. Now, my preference these days is to use 2 circulars when I'm knitting in the round, and I do, most of my previous hats have been done that way. However, when I've been going through all my stash and my project bags and my needles, I've been sorting out my needles to see what I do and don't have, because I'm sure I can't be the only one who's had this experience, but you know, you go to find some needles in a certain size, you know you've got them, you know you've knit plenty of things with them before, but can you find them? No. So you end up buying more. So I've been sorting and putting them, I've got one of those hanging, but I don't hang it. Here's a photo. I can't think of the word. Here's a photo of it. I guess divider, we'll go with that. So as you can see, it's a little bit chaotic because all the needles just stick out everywhere and it's all very busy. So I have other plans of how I'm going to delineate them. I got some little zipper pouches when I was in Japan, just from the 100 yen shop. It's like $1. So I'm going to, this is the first stage of dividing by size, seeing what I have, and then I'm going to put them in for a different storage solution. So it's a work in progress, which is appropriate for the work in progress section. But I have a lot of 4mm needles, a lot of 2.25mm needles, and then the other sizes are a bit more, you know, appropriate, you know, 1 or 2. When I'm saying appropriate, I'm not making any judgment on anyone else with your number of needles. I'm talking about me and how I've just bought things when I can't find them, which is, you know, silly for me. So yes, I'm going to have a look through. There are some I know that I, you know, not don't prefer, so I might destash them. There are some where I know I love the Chiaogu brand, so I might, if I'm destashing some that I'm not a fan of, I might replace with Chiaogu, or I might not. I might wait till I need that size of needle. You know, I don't necessarily want to have the expense if I'm not going to be needing the needle straight away. We shall see. I'll let you know. All that to say, in going through all my needles, I found my double points, and I know that with double points there's a bit more ease when you get to the end of one needle. You know, you're kind of just ready to go, whereas I suppose with two circulars and magic loop, you know, you've got to pull your needle through and get it ready. Also with using, this is the 7mm size needle, which is what I knit the rubies in my pocket pattern, and not just me, that's one of the recommended sizes. On two circulars, and I haven't brought them here, I'm afraid, you know, the cord is thin cord, and then you've got your needle. So when you go to join the next bit, if you pull too hard, it's a similar thing, I think, with magic loop. You can make that end stitch really thin, so you got to be careful. Whereas with double points, that's not an issue because the end stitch is still there. So I thought I'd give it a go. Now, I didn't dislike it because I've used double points on smaller projects recently. Not the fingerless mitts I just showed you there, but some other fingerless mitts. And it was fine, no problem. I do find with these though, these bigger ones, the whole thing, and it's heavier yarn, it's quite hard on my hands, especially with my rheumatoid arthritis. So I'm going to, you know, obviously finish this pattern in them, but I don't think they'd be my go-to for doing in the round at this size, just because of the effect it has on my hands. So it's not to say that anyone else would have the same effect or not, but they're such pretty needles. These are Knit Pro Cubics, and I've had these for quite a while. These are the, I did, I think, 5mm, oh, that's right, they're 4.5mm needles, but when I put them through my needle gauge, they don't fit in the 4.5, they fit in the 5, yet the 7mm fit in the 7mm hole, so I don't know what's happening there, but anyway, so really pretty wooden needles. Oh, look at that one especially. So yeah, really pretty to work with, just, oh, and I love that sound, can you hear it? But yeah, a little bit hard on my hands, so I wouldn't, I think I'll be going back to my two circulars for future. But all that to say, it's a very fun project. I think having the two layers, it makes it really soft. It's going to loosen a little bit with blocking because it's superwash wool, but this is also going to be a charity project. Did I already mention that? Apologies if I did. So anyway, that's going to be in that. It's living in my Love Sock Wool bag. Little fairy tale. I have a hoo! The first snake sock is done. This is the no heel ribbed sock pattern. I think it's something like that. The words may be in a different order. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. All my projects are listed in my show notes, or there's a link to my Ravelry project page in the show notes, because I really love using Ravelry to update my projects. I find that's the perfect thing for me, to just have that one single source of truth where all my details are, and it means when I want to refer back to something, I more recently have all the details of the yarn and the needle size. I did find recently I was looking for something, and I was looking at a project I know I'd made in like 2012 or something, and I hadn't put the needle size in. Very frustrating past, Melinda. Thanks for that. But that's okay. These days I'm very quite regimented in putting in all those details, because it, as I said, it not only helps me to refer to, but the info's there for you or for anyone else who comes across it on Ravelry. So yes, link to the pattern, specific name is there. I love these, they're so fun. So the premise is, I did mention last time, but just in case you didn't see that, or as a refresher, no heel on the socks. You do a pattern of 6 rows of 3x3 rib, and then every 6 rows you move the pattern over by 1 stitch, and that creates this spiral. And when you put them on, I haven't blocked these yet because it's only a hoe. Oh, and there's a million different ends there, and my fingers are getting caught in them because of where I've joined the yarns. When you put it on, you're supposed to sort of twist it out so that it's straight, like that. So it looks really fun, I think, and the whole point being that that rib and the twisted pattern hugs it to your foot, and so you don't need a heel. Now, Lisa, who is Saratoga Knitting of Knitting by the Sea podcast, she's knit some of these, and that's where I heard of the pattern. And she knit them for herself, and she said when she's wearing them, she can't feel any different from wearing a heeled sock, so that's encouraging. But I've knit these for my nephew. It's his 8th birthday next month. And I always knit tube socks for my nieces and nephews because my nibblings, that's the new word. Because, you know, with children with growing feet, there's no point putting a heel in. Well, for me, because, you know, I'm not knitting them socks every 5 minutes. By not putting a heel in, they last longer for them. And so I think this will be good because he's got quite slender little ankles. Sometimes the socks are too baggy there. This will be really good because it'll just hug to his shape. So yes, very good for that. And then, ta-da! Second sock is also cast on. And oh, I'm in the middle of a round, but that's okay. We can work with that. So let's do a quick side by side. Not too much more. Now you can see as I'm holding it up, there's not a matching blue here. So last episode I mentioned that I'd pulled out all the green stripes from a Felici colourway because I'd used all the pink for another project. So if you haven't seen that, I won't go into it in full detail here, but pop back and look at episode 68 and you'll see. So I've got all the blue to green yarns there, and that's why I was mentioning there's all the ends, and of course there's yellow on top. But for some of them, you know, who knows why, just different variations in the balls of yarn. So on this one, you can see you've got blue. This blue's a little bit shorter. There was less. And then for this part, there was no blue in what I had left. So it doesn't matter. It's not going to make any difference. So I just kept knitting up. So on this one, we've got blue. This blue was much bigger. But then you can see here, and not very well because the colours are very similar, it started going into this lighter green, but I only did about 2 rows and then it started moving into that green. Who knows why? It doesn't matter. Essentially what I'm going to do, once I get closer to the top, is have a look, and if I need to, I'll just do more yellow on this one if I need to make it longer, or if I have, you know, too much of the greens, I'll just stop earlier, use the leftovers for wrapping a present or something. So you can see here for the ribbing, the pattern doesn't continue, like it's not the little blobs, it's blobs. It's instead of going 6, move across, once you get to the ribbing, you finish doing a pattern repeat, your 6 rounds, then you move over 1 stitch, but then you just keep going in that formation for all your ribbing. I think it would still be perfectly functional if you did do the 6, 6, 6, but it's just to give it that different look for the ribbing, just to have a more pronounced section. So I have joined in this yellow because I mentioned last time that yellow is my nephew's favourite colour, and I think that just works really well because I wasn't sure. I was going to go back and do the grey, but this grey I mentioned last time. Do I have the tags here? One moment please. The grey is Berger de France yarn. Oh, here it is. In the Gumi 50, and it's in the aluminium colourway. This is a very nice toothy, hard-wearing yarn, so it's not super soft. It's not terribly scratchy either. But, so the reason I put it as the toe is to give the toe that structure, as, you know, kids hurriedly put their socks on and their toe, you know, could possibly shoot through, as it has when I've used merino for a toe before, for my nephew. So I did that for the toe. So I was going to do this for the ribbing, the grey at the top, to sort of match. And I think, look, I don't think it would be overly scratchy, but you never know with young kids, or with anyone, but, you know, with little kids who might be more sensitive, not used to it, I thought I would instead use a softer yarn, and it's this one, isn't it? That's blowing out, it's not that fluorescent. I don't believe I have the tag for that one. Oh, that's the tag for the Felici yarn, the stripes, the Spring Blooms colourway. But as I said, this doesn't have the pink in it. This is also a Knit Picks. This is the Swish fingering. Is it Swish? The standard, they've got one in, it must be Swish, because yes, the ones I was showing you earlier on the purple and grey hat was Swish, worsted and DK. This is the fingering. So this is super soft. It's 75-25 merino nylon. And that bright colour I think just goes really nicely, picks it all up, and it gives him a nice taste of yellow. So I used that for the ribbing, and I think, I can't even remember how many I did. I've written it down so I have it in my notes. But you can see it flares a bit at the top. So what I did, similar to the fingerless knits I showed you earlier, once I had done as much ribbing as I wanted, I then did one round of stockinette and then the Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off. So I don't think it matters in any way, shape or form that it flares. I think it flares as well because, the socks going in a very distinct spiral. Obviously all socks go in a spiral, or anything goes in a spiral when you're knitting in the round, but as in this pattern makes the spiral that brings it all in like that. So I think the fact that you've stopped doing the knitting and purling makes it flare slightly, but I think that just gives it more stretch and it'll make it easier for him to get off and on. So yeah, these are going really, really well. I didn't cast them on for about a week, the second one, because I was trying to avoid the pinhole cast on. And of course, as soon as I did it again, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But, I needed some quiet time. I needed to make sure I was ready. So it went fine. The only thing I would say is, so the pinhole, you cast on just a small amount of stitches and then you just cinch it and that pulls the hole together. And on the first one, it went quite evenly. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but this one, so you've got like a ring and then you cinch the ring. This one, it's sort of left a ring shape in the stitches. I don't think it's going to show. Trust me, it doesn't mean it's going to, there's no hole in it, it's all sealed up before. It just for whatever reason hasn't, folded in on itself. Doesn't matter. I, have woven in the end of the pinhole cast on, so it's all very stable. It's just, interesting. Who knows why that happens? I don't know the pinhole cast on well enough. But very good. It's going to be very functional. I did use double points for that as well, because I guess you could use 2 circulars or magic loop. You just have to work out where your increases are, because you're increasing 4 times out from the pinhole. So I just decided to go, because I was learning the technique, decided to go with the method in all the videos. These are also Knit Pros. These are not the cubics, these are round ones. And I think I mentioned last time, the wooden needles, I'm so used to metal needles now. The wooden needles were so sticky, and especially when you're working with a small amount of stitches, I found it harder to wrangle. So I might look into getting some Chiaogu double points in the 2.25. But having said that, I'm not sure that I'll be doing too many more pinhole cast-ons for socks. I do like it, but I wonder if I could just do top down and then just decrease down and just cinch it that way. However, it is always nice to have a growth mindset and to continue to learn. I have mentioned before that, I like my knitting to be a bit more straightforward because I don't have the brain space or the spoons. But having said that, I might continue, and I think it might, people always say that toe-up socks are good to use up all the yarn you have, so that might be a thing. We will see. But anyway, when I was using the double points, I had them in this lovely needle cozy, and that is from Shara Made, and it matches, goes with my bag. So Shara Made, who has the What Shara Made podcast, and I was lucky enough to receive this as a gift when we met up at the Australian Sheep and Wool Show in 2016. And this fabric, this has got all train and tram stations for the city of Melbourne, which is near where Shara lives, so it's very cool. My red polka dots, always awesome. So I have that bag for most of it, and then I've been keeping the yarn and things that I don't need to take out with me every day. This is the Bling Your String bag, the lovely teapots. So yeah, I've been taking this as my commute knitting most of this week, and it's really easy. I didn't want to take the toe as my commute knitting because, as I said, I needed to be focused and organised. But yeah, this is going well, so that should be ready to show you next week. And my final work in progress, I only cast on a couple of days ago, but it's got quite a lot of progress. So This is the Terribly Simple Shawl by Caitlin French, who has a fabulous Instagram feed. So her surname is French with 2 F's, so that's her Instagram name. And it's really simple, free pattern. It's essentially a crescent-shaped shawl. So she just describes the increases that you do. You can use any weight of yarn, any size of needles, and you just garter. So I cast this on because I went to an outdoor concert the other night with some friends, and I wanted something that I could knit on in the dark quite easily. I didn't want to take the 3x3 socks because I'm not so good at purling without looking, and I thought, you know, I don't want to be dropping stitches in the dark, because it was at it was an outdoor venue, as I said, but it was on a golf course, so they had the stage way up the front, they had some screens so you could see, but no lighting anywhere around. Even when you left, I thought it might have been good for them to put some floodlights out or something, because yeah, it was a bit dangerous. There's water courses everywhere. Anyway, luckily, as far as I know, no one got injured. But yes, feedback I will be providing. So I thought this will be nice and easy, because other than the increase that you do at both ends, there, so you'd have 2 stitches, your increase, which is a knit front and back. Then when you get to the end, on the 3rd last stitch, knit front and back, then 2 stitches. So I've got a little stitch marker there. These are from Little Skein in the Big Wool. They were ones of one of the Disney princesses. She had a whole range at the time, so this might be Rapunzel, perhaps? Anyway, they're pretty regardless, and they do their job. So I'd cast on and got it started, so that's where I was up to when I went to the event, and I got that much done, which is quite good for a couple of hours in the dark. At one point, just before we left, I mucked up the increase and dropped the stitch marker, and it was all, you know, I was just like, I'll just keep going. So luckily I was able to pick it up, and it was just, I think I'd dropped the increase stitch, so it was very easy to fix. So fortunately that was all good. So this is really terribly simple, as the name of the pattern suggests, and great. I don't think I've ever made a crescent shawl in garter before. I've definitely made crescent shawls before, but they've always been in stockinette or stockinette with a pattern. For example, the Pebble Beach shawl by Helen Stewart at Curious Handmade. I really want to make another one of those. I think I've got it in my queue to do another one. Perhaps a bigger one. The one I've got is the shawlette size, but it's just so pretty. But yes, so I think I'll definitely make these again, because they're great, just so simple. And I'm using, this ball's nearly run out, more knit picks. This is the Swish Worsted in the Delft Heather colourway. And this colourway is really pretty, because it's a heathered, it's got the overall blue, but it's got like purple tones and different colours, so really, really nice. And I've used this colourway several times before. I did a scarf last year for my cousin, whom I stayed with when we were in Japan. That was just a straight garter stitch long scarf. And I think I've used it in a hat before. So I know it blocks out really, really soft. Like in the ball, that feels really soft. When it's knit up, particularly in garter, it feels a bit rougher. I remember when I was knitting the scarf for my cousin last year, it'd been a while since I'd used it, so I'd forgotten how soft it blocked, but I remembered it being soft. So I was knitting and I was like, it doesn't feel soft, what's going on? I'm going, will it be okay? Oh, how sensitive is he? Oh. But then when it blocked, it was all fine. It was lovely. So this is going to be a charity project as well. So again, the dark colour, the softness, the good hard wearing, it's going to be a really good charity project. So I keep mentioning the dark colours. I did chat about that in, again, one of the episodes late last year, so it was either 66 or 67, around there. Charities ask, or often ask, for darker colours, because people who are perhaps, you know, homeless or living in refugee camps, or you know, shelters, if it's domestic violence shelters, anything like that, don't necessarily have access to a lot of washing facilities. So by having the dark colours, even if the item gets a bit dirty, it still gives the person the dignity of not having dirty looking things. So this colour, really beautiful. I think it will be, I mean, it's going to be a shawl. That doesn't mean a man can't use it, because it's be more like a scarf. You can just wrap it around. So I think it'd be a good gender neutral colour, nice and dark. And I'll be using up the yarn that I have, so it's all a bit floppy. So this was a full ball, I think. It was either definitely full or close to full when I started knitting with it. So that's, you know, I don't know what percentage, but quite a bit of the ball there. And then because I've used it before, I've had two, that's two there, I've just put them together in one holder to keep them together. So I'll probably just knit the whole thing till I've used it up, but I'll see how I go. If it looks, you know, like it's getting too big, but really, can it be too big? You know, it'll just be nice and bigger and warmer. So yes, I'll be using those up. These are 5.5mm needles, I think. These are the Knit Pro Zing. And when I first knit with these, I loved them. And then I bought a whole lot more. And then when I got them all, I was like, I don't really love these. I think it's because they're not as sharp. So the Chiaogus that I love, and would, you know, knit everything in Chiaogus if I could. When I say I could, as in if I bought them. They're much sharper, more solid. These are really nice and light, so there is that, because they're made out of aluminium. And when I say I don't like them, or I don't love them, it's not that I don't like them. So they're perfectly functional for doing a knit front and back. They work really well, and they are light, as I said. So this is one of the examples where I only have one needle in this size, 5.5, and I don't tend to use it very often. So I probably wouldn't bother replacing these. I just keep them. I guess if I was using them for a project and I just found them unworkable, I'd get rid of them. But no, they've been fine. You know, if I win Lotto, I'll replace everything with Chiaogu. Until then, I'll keep using these. Now I've put those in my YarnderWoman bag, which is by Knit So Pop. She kindly sent that to me, and she gave us a prize for last year. And that's because when I went out for the night, it was a ladies' night. Not the whole event, but we were going out with friends, so I thought, we could all be YarnderWoman. So we've got our goals knit along or make along. So this is where, if there's something that you've got on your list that you really want to make this year, this is a good opportunity to start it. You don't have to finish it. We only have the one thread for both chatter, finished objects, WIPs, anything. So, you know, some people are doing make 9, some people might just have goals or resolutions, anything like that. If you don't have either of those and your immediate goal is, I feel like knitting socks, there you go, you can enter those. So it's very loose. It's just about knitting something you want to make, and if you do have a specific goal, just a good reason to get it started. So what I'm knitting that I haven't really cast on yet, which is why you didn't see it in WIPs, but I've been swatching. I'm going to make the Amagansett dress for the Yarnder team, and here we go. Excuse the rustling. That's the dress there, and I think this is kind of how she'll wear it as well, like over jeans. So 3 colours involving different widths for the different stripes, and I've got it in this lovely pattern holder. So this is from Madbird, and it has a matching bag. And I think, talking back to, you know, Blue Moon Fibre Arts being one of my first yarn purchases, I think this might be my first project bag purchase. So Madbird there as well. And even though these colours are not really my usual colours, I just fell in love with the fabric. I just thought it was so cute. Look at that. So cute. And this is the only pattern holder I have, and I think it came as a set, and I thought it was good, and I don't tend to use this very often. So why not, indeed, when I have a pattern I need to follow? And a very cute bag. So as I said, I've swatched. This was my first swatch. You can see I was a bit over swatching by the time I got to the second one. So I think this one was a 4.5mm needle, and this was a 5mm. And the yarn I have is Knit Picks. This is all Knit Picks pretty much, except for Blue Moon. The Shine Worsted. So this is Pima Cotton and Modal, which is a fibre made out of wood. So, yeah, vegan yarn, I suppose. And the reason I've chosen this for a knitted dress is because it gets very warm in Perth. You know, we feel the cold in winter, but it's nothing like, you know, a Northern Hemisphere winter. So I didn't want to use wool because it would make it very limited opportunity to wear it. So hoping that this will be more multi-season. And it's a really nice feel, the yarn. It's almost velvety. So I think it's going to be really nice to wear. Yarnder team can be very sensitive in terms of, you know, touching what fibres touch it. So I think this is going to be perfect. So I didn't get gauge on the recommended size, and I did get gauge on this one, but I'm a little bit concerned because you can see there, you can see through it quite a bit, and I'm thinking for a dress, I don't want, you know, you do you if you do like this, but I don't want for the Yarnder team, I don't think she does either, to be able to see, you know, her underwear. You know, she might be able to wear a dress, sorry, like a singlet, and then perhaps, what do you call those? Is it boy leg undies where it's just kind of straight across? Perhaps, but, so I'm a little bit concerned by that. And I wonder if, you know, I sort of hung the swatch, but I wonder if this one would be better because it might grow. What do you think? I mean, I know cotton can grow, but this isn't 100% cotton. It is made in pieces. The pieces are top down, but yeah, there is going to be a seam down the side, so, and I think on the shoulder, so there'll be that for the stability. So I think I'll use the bigger needle size, because this one on my gauge, even if I knit the smallest size of the pattern, it would make it too big, because Yarnder team is quite slender, and so if it's too big, it'll just look funny because it's shaped for the body, so if it's too big, it just won't sit right. So I think I'll be knitting the smallest size with this gauge. I'm a bit concerned though. I don't know. Does anyone have any opinions or thoughts or tips and tricks? This is the first time I've really made any adult garment. I've made some smaller cardigans and jumpers for kids, but that was with wool and, you know, sizing they can grow into it. So yeah, any tips and tricks would be most appreciative. Appreciative? The tips will be appreciative. No, I will be appreciative. The tips will be appreciated. Ah dear. But yes, now I was going to make this cowl run just to the end of February, but I might extend it just to give people a little bit more time. So we'll run it till the end of March. Again, you don't have to finish. It's all just participation. So I've got some prizes to show you. First off, this very cute sock monkey bag. This is by the Silver Shed. And very fun polka dots inside. I have a bag, not the same one, a different style in Sock Monkey. And she was very kind, this was a while ago when I bought mine, to send this one as a prize. So my apologies, Silver Shed, that I've held on to this for so long, but I'm really happy that we can give it away now. It's got little buttons in between. Very cute. And you get a nice, this is Australian owned and made tea brand. And who doesn't want to relax? So that's one prize. This prize, oh, it's a little fishy bag. Now this was bought for us by the Yarnder team to give away as a prize when we were in Japan. So you get that. This will make it just a really cute little notions pouch. It's got the beautiful Japanese fabric. And then there's also a little something inside. Another tea bag. But these stitch markers. And these are by Needle Soup on Etsy. And what they are, she uses vintage knitting needles and she upcycles them into jewellery and stitch markers. So these are the ends of some knitting needles, the tops and then the tips. So how fun is that? Little stitch markers. And then our third prize is also from Japan. I got this one for us. So again, a little pull drawer. And you also get a tea bag. And then I got these at a Japanese stationery store. This one's going for a little ride. They're little clips. I can't get them to work. Oh, there we go. Little clips made of sheep. They're so cute. So yes, those will go in there as well. So 3 prizes. As I said, you don't have to finish your project. Just come and join the thread. We'll extend it to March. And it's going to be really exciting. Now, speaking of prizes, 2 episodes ago I announced some winners from our 2017 charity thread. We also have the 2018 thread going, so go and pop in there and have a look at some beautiful projects people are making for charity. And if you do any, doesn't have to just be knitting, crochet, sewing, any of that is acceptable, so have a look. But we had 3 winners from the 2017 thread. Only 1 person has been in touch, and as I mentioned last episode, I was going to redraw if I hadn't yet heard, which I haven't, which is a shame, but that's okay, 2 more winners. So, the beautiful Skaha sweater pattern by Marsha Ibuki was donated to us by lovely Marsha. That is going to now post 182 Maths Cat, Catherine from Melbourne in Australia. Yay! And we also have the Enchanted Forest Pool Shawl by lovely Jen Sheelan. Thank you, Jen. And that one is going to post 163, Yarn About Yarn, Christine from New South Wales, Australia. Yay! So, Christine and Catherine, if you get in touch with me, and then I will get Marsha and Jen respectively to send you your patterns. So, thank you everyone. Please, as I said, go and check out the charity cowl thread, and also our make along thread. Okay, quick intermission before we go to Spinning Me Right Round, because I'm about to head off and meet up with Becky, who is from the Wrapped in Wool audio podcast and Westerly Whimsies on Instagram and Ravelry. Becky is originally from Australia but lives in America now, but she's come back to Perth for family visits, so I'm going to go and meet up with her and have a coffee. So I'll be back with Spinning Me Right Round after this quick break, and here's a little footage of Becky and I and her lovely little boy. See you soon. So what's your name?
Emmett.
Emmett, and what are you drawing, Emmett?
Oh, well, I'm drawing My Little Pony.
Oh, and is that your favourite character? Do you like Rainbow Dash?
Yeah.
Rainbow Dash. Oh, thank you so much for showing us. You're doing a wonderful job. So I'm back from meeting up with Becky and gorgeous little Emmett, who just kept saying, Melinda, 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 it was so cute. And look who I found afterwards.
Mum!
Yes, YarnderMum's here. And I literally found her because I stopped in her house and she wasn't there, and I thought she's probably walked up to the shops. So I went up and I was looking around, and there she was.
I'm always at the shops.
Yes. So yes, we bundled her up and brought her over here, and I think after we record we're going to go out to our favourite cafe.
That's it.
Yes. And I'll have my new favourite drink. If you've followed me on Instagram, you may have seen it. They call it a New York Summer, and it's a shot of espresso coffee in sparkling mineral water with orange zest in it. It is so nice, so refreshing. So I'm definitely going to have that if they still have it on the menu. Yes.
Good.
You'll get your...
I'll have some too.
Okay. And you might get, I don't know, your favourite's either avocado on sourdough, or lately it's just been coconut soft serve with cake.
Yeah.
Yep, so it'll probably be the ice cream, let's be honest. Or a banana split.
Yep, banana split.
Yes, yes. Anyway, before that, I've got quite a lot to show you. First off, I'll show you how much knitting I got done when I was with Becky. So I'll link to Becky's podcast. She does the audio podcast Wrapped in Wool, and that's her handle on Instagram as well. I did say it was Westerly Whimsy earlier. I think it used to be, and it may still be on Ravelry, but she's now Wrapped in Wool on Instagram. Now I'm halfway through a row. So this is the Terribly Simple shawl, the one by Caitlin French, and I put a marker in, so the orange is where I was up to before I went out. So I got, you know, quite a few rows done because it's getting quite long now. So that was nice, and Becky was working on a sock, and we were just chatting. Emmett had his colouring. It was all very nice. Lovely, lovely to catch up. She's here for a few weeks, so we're definitely going to catch up again. So that will be really nice. And what was especially nice, as well as seeing her and Emmett, she gave me a present. Look, isn't that beautiful? So this is hazel knits. I've never knit with nor seen hazel knits before, and the colourway is called Ruby Love. How perfect.
Easy love.
Ruby Love.
Ruby love.
Yes, yes. We're not easy.
No. I might be.
YarnderMum started going out on a weekly bus trip with some other senior citizens, and she kept talking about how she might meet a new man.
Did I?
Yes. I said, we don't have to get married again though. You can just have a, you know, your fella that you see every week.
Right.
So see how you go. Anyway, it actually says Ruby Love. We got on a very big tangent there. And it's the Divine base, and it's Divine because it's 75 superwash merino, 15% cashmere and 10% silk.
Oh my goodness.
Have a feel.
Oops, it's gone.
Oh dear, I might have to find that again before someone goes home. Mine. I'm sure I can knit you something. If not with this, then with something else.
It's beautiful.
It is gorgeous. So thank you, Becky. embarrassingly, I forgot to take my present for Becky with me, because when I was recording earlier, I obviously talked longer than I had intended to in the time I'd given myself, and I checked the time, realised I had to go right then. So while I had the present, it wasn't next to my handbag, so I took, and so as Becky got the present out, I went, oh, I'm sorry, how embarrassing. But there will be a present for Becky later, I promise. So yes. Okay, so for spinning right around, I've got a little bit more to say about my stash sorting. So I will admit it's hit a bit of a break, but I'm nearly done. I think I've pretty much typed everything in that was new. So it essentially is done. There's just a few, bits and bobs that I've found along the way that I want to also sort out. A few things that I might sell, to put in for D-stash. So I'm going to, list those. I usually list them on, there's an Australian knitters forum, and obviously if anyone else in anywhere else around the world wants to buy them, that's fine. I'd have to get the specific postage. So putting in the Australian, I can do, the set things, and that seems to be easier. Also the knitting needles, as I said. And what I've also found, what was really handy, you may not be aware, or you may, when you go into your stash page on Ravelry, if you then hit advanced search, which is towards the right hand side, that will then bring up where you can do a search through your own stash. So that's really helpful, because it meant as I found things in my stash, I could search for that one specifically to see whether I'd already written it in, or how much I had noted, had I noted that I'd used up some already. So that was really handy. Another thing I did to help me get the amounts equal, if I saw a yarn where I'd used some and I could remember which project it was from, I'd weigh the yarn and I'd go to that project and I'd enter in how much I'd used, and that way it deducts and tells you what's left in your stash. But for some I couldn't remember what project it was, or couldn't find the project or whatever. So what I did was, to still be able to denote that I only had a little bit left, I've opened a project page and I've just entered in those yarns, put in the amount that's no longer there, and that way it's totaling the correct amount for what I have left in my stash. The reason I didn't just change the stash to show, say, 50 grams when it was 100 is because that tends to not display properly what it was originally. It's sort of, it doesn't show the amount when you look at the page. When you go in to edit, it does, so it's a bit strange. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong or if that's just a feature, but I found it much better if you show the stash has been used somewhere, then it tallies properly for what's remaining. So that's been very, very nice indeed to have it all equal and correct. I'm sure you agree.
I fully agree.
Yep. No idea what we're talking about, do you?
Absolutely none. But for all your visitors and
yes, all the viewers,
yes,
they'll know what Ravelry is. Yes,
right. Yes. And they won't mind if I'm...
oh no, they'll think you're very cute.
Good.
So, some books and self-improvement things I've been reading and listening to. So, last year when I went to Japan, the cousin that I stayed with, they have Netflix, and the documentary The Minimalists was on. That's Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, who go by The Minimalists. Now, I'd heard of them before. I'd read their blog, listened to their podcast. If you've been watching a while, you know I've been interested in slow living for the last year and a half, 2 years, with the Slow Home podcast being the first one I came across. And incidentally, I heard about that from Helen of Curious Handmade. So it's all knitting ties to everything. But yeah, I knew that they had a documentary, but I hadn't been able to see it yet. So I watched it while I was there. I actually watched it twice. And when I came back, for the first week, I had 2 weeks off when we got back from Japan before I went to work. First week I was really sick. The second week though, I started doing a lot of decluttering. And I went through a lot of my wardrobe, clothes that I hadn't worn in years. And it was so freeing. Like, I know that cognitively, I think, decluttering equals more mental space as well. But to actually experience it was amazing. So I just didn't realize how much mental load there'd been from having a wardrobe stuffed full of clothes, most of which didn't fit or I didn't like. The mental load that was there from, scanning your eyes across, subconsciously going, no, 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 no. To now have a whole wardrobe of stuff that I like and that fits me. There's not as much. It's really good. Perfect. It's good, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You occasionally declutter, but you're more of a cling on to things, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes. We're working on you.
Well, not if you can find it.
But yes, I am decluttering and minimizing. And of course, that's all it's about. It's only about you. You can't make other people do it because, you know, everyone has to come to it themselves. But Damien got a lot from the documentary as well. Also, we've thought about the feeling of, does something bring joy? You know, you look at something that's from the Maria Kondo, who does the, the life-changing magic of tidying up, and Spark Joy, which is one of the books I was going to talk about. She talks about, you know, if your object brings you joy or it's useful, then that means you should keep it and keep it happily. If it doesn't bring you joy, it's not useful, it's just taking up space, let it go, let it be with someone else. So we've been trying to implement that. I've got a couple weeks off work in next month, so I aim to get a good more done, because as I said, I've sort of stalled a bit on the stash sorting. I've definitely sort of stalled on the home decluttering, but we'll go and we'll do a bit of your house as well, maybe.
No.
Some days she's in a really positive frame of mind about it. We won't talk about it again then.
Bring it out later.
You're going to hide things from me.
Yeah.
And to clarify, I'm not going to take anything of Mum's. She doesn't want to. You've previously said you'd like to tidy up and declutter. We'll work that out later. Let's move on. So, The Minimalist, as I said, have a podcast, have this documentary, but they've also released a few books. So the ones that I listened to, because I got them on Audible, was Everything That Remains, which is sort of a story of how Joshua Fields Millburn in particular, he wrote the book, but Ryan Nicodemus has some interludes as well. How he came to his minimalist convictions, how they both went from, you know, working too many hours, being in debt, to really reclaiming and reframing what they wanted their lives to be. So that's that one. And the other one is called Essential by The Minimalist, and that's a collection of essays taken both from their website, but also ones written just for the book. So again, just stories about minimalism, and they don't just look at minimalism in terms of stuff, but also mental clutter, ways of just living a better and more focused life. So really interesting, so I'd recommend them. I would say the narrator for the Essential collection, I thought detracted from the book quite a bit. He was talking like he was really spaced out, and he'd talk as if everything just had to be emphasized and serious. So that was a bit off-putting, so that's all I'd say, but that's not to do with the book itself, that was just the narrator, so that's a shame, but never mind. So as well as looking at minimalism, oh sorry, I just kicked you out as I crossed my legs.
Ow.
Sorry, here I'll rub it better. As well as looking at minimalism and slow living and just wanting to refocus, part of that sort of looks at keeping your house tidy. When I say part of it, I mean part of what I wanted to do. Keeping your house tidy, because from when I was little, I would love having a clean bedroom, but it would never stay tidy, would it? No.
But that's what little kids do.
Oh, that's right. It's not like it was unusual, you know.
No.
It's a rare child that keeps their room tidy. If they do, awesome. But yeah. So part of, if you've got fewer things, there's obviously fewer places they have to be. And part of what Maria Kondo looks at is, you know, only keeping the things that bring you joy. And part of that overall slow living, joyfulness, minimalism, being tidy is a place for everything and everything in its place. So I listened to Spark Joy, which is the follow-up Maria Kondo book. So there was a lot of sort of practical examples in that with how she does the sorting of things, how she does the folding. So I've done the folding where she does for t-shirts. It's much easier to find them, easy to see them, all that sort of thing. And then I found a book on Audible called How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. And the author of that is Dana White, I believe. I haven't written it down, but I'm pretty sure that's her name. Links to all of these books will be in the show notes, by the way. And Dana has a blog called A Slob Comes Clean. And she started this blog without telling anyone it was her, because she was referring to herself as a slob, meaning that her house was just always dirty and messy, and her blog was a way of trying to channel it, but she didn't want to reveal. She used to blog anonymously before she revealed it was herself. And this book sort of tells that story, as well as her hints and tips on keeping things tidy. And she starts her book off by explaining that most of the tidying and the sorting books, like she mentions Marie Kondo, she said they're all written by people who are naturally organised and naturally tidy. And she said she was writing a book from the perspective of, she's a self-proclaimed slob. So she was saying this was a book to help people who were not naturally organised and naturally tidy. Now, I'd say I'm somewhere in between. I'm certainly not at the perfectionist, everything is tidy all the time level, but I wouldn't describe myself as a slob either. And yeah, so I'm not somewhere in between. So it was really good to get a different perspective. And she says the key thing she found that made her, even if her house was not perfect, because, you know, let's face it, it's rare that someone's house is perfect, and we should certainly step away from having to feel we need to be perfect, especially women. That tends to be a societal pressure. It's like tangent, but yes. She said the thing that really helped her feel more in control of her space was if the dishes were done. So she talks a lot in her book about, you know, do your dishes first, do your dishes every day, and that's a way of keeping things on track. I already do my dishes every day, so I was like, winning, I'm already doing that.
Do you turn the dishes over?
That's right. Wash the dishes dry, the dishes turn, the dishes over. That was a little game we used to play when we were little. Does anyone else know that? Is it just an Australian thing, I wonder? Don't know. Anyway, so yes, I would recommend that. She's got quite a good sense of humour, and it has got some good tips, and it's just good to... I've really been in the zone, particularly the second half of last year, but this year a bit as well, of this self-improvement thing, hearing about things that I might be able to do. That doesn't mean I'm running out and doing them all, because I'm busy, sometimes a bit lazy, and, you know, like I was talking about last week, the spoons theory with chronic conditions and whatnot, you know, I don't always have enough spoons to clean, and I think that's more than fine. Even if you have spoons and you don't want to clean, that's fine too. No judgment whatsoever. Who likes cleaning? You don't like cleaning.
I don't mind too much.
Yeah, she doesn't like cleaning.
Our house is filthy.
It's not filthy. You get a cleaner to come in anyway. You get a community provided cleaner. You're lucky. Yes. Anyway, so there was that one, and sort of tying in then with, you know, we've gone from minimalism, sparking joy and tidying. Another thing I really wanted to focus on was budgeting. And, you know, Damien and I pay our bills, it's all good, but I know that we essentially waste money because we don't always necessarily have an idea of where it's going. I'm assuming a lot of people can relate to that. We sort of, you know, get to just before payday and go, what did I spend my money on, you know? And for me, it's definitely cafe coffees, going to the cafe on the way to work.
On the way to work?
Yes, not sitting in at the cafe, although very occasionally I do that, but more takeaways.
Oh, okay.
In a non-disposable cup, I will add though, reusable cup. But yes, so things like that, and just, you know, little purchases here and there, it all adds up. So last year, when would it have been? Maybe late October? I think it was, yeah, mid to late October. You may have seen on Instagram, I actually said I was going to be on a spending ban till the end of the year. I wasn't going to buy anything that wasn't necessary. Presents were not included because coming up to Christmas, you know, had things to buy. And that went pretty well. It was a good way to have that in the forefront of the mind. And a book I listened to at that time was called The Debtor's Guide to Spending, and there's a longer title, but I haven't noted it down, I'm sorry. That's by Anna Newell-Jones, and she has the blog andthenwesaved.com. YarnderMum's looking off to the side because our fridge is broken at the moment and it keeps making bizarre noises like there's an alien trying to get out. It does remind me of...
Run for the hills!
It's kind of like Ghostbusters, you know, where there's like another world inside. I think that's what's happening, but we haven't seen it yet. We can just hear it. But yes, I don't know if you can hear the noise, but you'll definitely be able to see YarnderMum looking confused. But yes, the book by Anna Newell-Jones, so The Debtor's Guide to Spending. So she now has the blog and thenwesaved.com, and similar to Dana White, who had the blog about tidying her home, Anna had this blog to try and get herself back on track. She actually went on a spending ban for a year. Her husband didn't. They had sort of separate incomes for that time. Well, I think they previously did anyway, and separate expenses. So that would mean he bought his own groceries, she bought her groceries, so would buy a lot less. And that was really good, and I really like that. I've listened to it a couple of times because it's got some really good tips, and I might listen to it again to just sort of bring it to the forefront of my mind. Because I do find I really like listening to these self-improvement books. Not all of them, they have to be good. As in, I like all of the ones I'm going to talk about. I mean, just in general, it's not like I listen to any and all self-improvement book. Some I've listened to and I've not thought much about, or thought much of, rather. In fact, there's one, I haven't written it down because I actually returned it to Audible because there was something offensive in it. It was something like, it was talking about cleaning, and it said something like, oh, single dads, you should listen to this too. As if, coupled dads wouldn't need to clean, and that single dads without a woman around must be really silly and not know what to do. So I found that very sexist for both perspectives. And it's just, in this day and age, it wasn't like it was an old book. And also, when she was talking about decluttering, she was saying, talking about, it's hard to declutter gifts. It definitely is. But the example she gave was, how many hand-knitted scarves do you need from someone who's given them to you and you just don't like them? And that's how the narrator read it. It's like...
So that was the end of him?
That was the end, yes. Because, being a knitter aside, of course if someone received a knitted good and they didn't like it or want it, they don't have to keep it. They could pass it on to someone. They could give it to the charity shop, whatever. But the way the narrator chose to read it as if it was like the biggest crime on the planet that someone, given you a hand-knitted scarf. So that already put me off. But then when it brought out this sexism, that was the end of it. So I have not written that down. And that's my explanation as to, no, I do not like every single self-improvement book. So I think these ones I'm going to mention are really good. So Debtor's Guide to Spending, one of the tips they give is to go through your bank account or bank statement for the last 3 months. And she references that a lot of budgeting things sometimes get you to track your spending from then, say for 2 weeks, which is good and still has merit. But the thing with that is people can sometimes, because they know they're going to write it down, can change what they spend. So it doesn't necessarily give you an accurate picture of how you've got to the point you're at. So by looking back 3 months, you can see what you did spend your money on, and that way you can see if there's any, areas you want to focus on or where you can improve, all that sort of thing. So we did that. That was very eye-opening and scary. Not only where, you wasted money, but also how much goes on bills. It's quite depressing, isn't it?
No, I don't.
No, you don't. You don't have to do any of that. No, Vinny, my brother, handles all of Mum's money, so you're just in.
I don't know if I've got
lack
any
of
left.
luxury. I think you're fine. Yes. And I will preface all of this with realizing how lucky we are that we have a job, that we have money in the bank, that we have a bank, that we live somewhere where it's safe and you can be concerned about going to a cafe more than once. There's so many people all around the world, including in Australia, that don't have those luxuries. So I do want to put that out there. This is not a complaint. It's just, we all got to work with what we have. So yes.
And there is possibility of improvement.
Exactly. And by improving your own finances, you can have more to give to charities and whatnot.
Exactly.
Yes. So yes, we did that. And then when I posted on Instagram, I got a lot of great support and messages. So thank you very much if that was you. And I asked for any budgeting tips people had. And several people mentioned Dave Ramsey, who's an American financial expert. And I got on Audible, and he has several books, but the one I got of his was Total Money Makeover. And he has lots of great tips, and he sort of has, I think it's 5 or 6 steps. One of which is save a certain amount in your emergency fund, pay off all your debts. Then it goes from there about different things you're doing. So they're the first 2 main things. And he has a budgeting sort of template spreadsheet as well. And I've been following that, and it's made such a difference. And it's the sort of thing I've wanted to do for so long, and it always just seemed too hard. But having it explained and set out means it's just so workable. Doesn't mean I've set to it all the time, because I've had a miscellaneous category, and you know, sometimes when your willpower is weak, or you end up spending something you shouldn't, it's like, oh, I'll just adjust the amount that's going in miscellaneous. Oh, it's balanced again. So,
what a good idea.
Exactly, it still balances.
And don't tell anyone.
That's right, exactly. See, I do it all. I obviously show Damien because we pool our money together, but you know, I'm the one who's controlling it all. So same with him. If he comes back and says, I've bought this, I'm like, okay, we'll adjust. So we're much better in terms of our, what's that word I'm looking for? Not extraneous spending. Incidental.
Complete and utter.
Complete and utter spending, yes, no. Discretionary spending, that's what I'm looking for. Yes, we're much better in that, but you know, we've got room for improvement. But you know, it's a busy time or expensive time of year. You have Christmas, then it's you know, the school year in Australia starts at the end of January, so you've got all the school books, school uniforms, school fees, school ball is coming up. Sophie's in year 12 this year, so which is all fine. It's all things we had in the budget. It just means there's not a lot of extra. Therefore, if I have too many cafe coffees, I'm going too much into the miscellaneous. So yes, really, really cannot recommend enough the Total Money Makeover book. I found it really useful. The Audible version has the author Dave Ramsey reading it, and he's I think he said he's from Tennessee, I think. But he's very commanding in what he says, and sometimes he yells at you. But it's not offensive. I found it quite funny. There's a few people reviewed said they didn't like his tone, but I think he's doing it a bit tongue-in-cheek as well as, you know, being very firm. So I think it's quite funny. So definitely recommend that. If you're not a person who's already organised their budget, it's not fun. It's, you know, boring adult stuff. Who wants to do that? But it made such a difference, and it's so relieving. And now when bills come in, I can go, oh, that's all budgeted, that's taken care of, type it in. It's much more satisfying. So yes, I recommend that one. Towards the end of the year, there are a couple of books coming out that I just could not wait for. One of which was this one. I actually bought actual books because I couldn't get the audio version of this one. This is Soul. And the other book that I ended up getting as a physical book is this one, Kate Flanders' The Year of Less. So Kate Flanders, I also first heard on the Slow Home podcast, and then she and Carrie, I've forgotten Carrie's surname, terrible, had the Budgets and Cents podcast, and they've since rebranded as Honest Money Conversations. So they've both got stories of debt and repayment, but I'll focus specifically on Kate because we're talking about the book. She did a year shopping ban. So I spoke earlier about the Anna Newell-Jones shopping ban book. Kate was the first person I'd ever heard of to do a shopping ban because they spoke a lot about that on their earlier podcast. And her blog used to be called Blonde on a Budget. It's now kateflanders.com. So Kate, had a total shopping ban, paid off all her debt, and then this book sort of starts from there. It's not talking about it is talking about the shopping ban, but also it's not just about that. It's about how she came to be where she is. It talks a lot about her family, her emotional aspects of her journey. It's called The Year of Less, but it's not just less stuff. It's not just less shopping. There's so much more to it. So this, while Soulful Simplicity was less story, more things, this was mostly story, but with the learnings in between that, if that makes sense. Highly recommend this book. Kate's from Canada, so it turns out that her audiobook was actually available on Australian Audible. So I'm actually thinking of getting the audio version just because I think it would be really nice to read the story by listening to it as well. So I really recommend those two. They were sort of my first two books of this year. And again, it's just that all those themes interweaving: minimalism, decluttering, budgeting, being soulful and simple and more deliberate in how you live. I think that's really important and something I continue to aim towards. Yay! And And then I've got 2 more paper books that I wasn't able to get in audio form either, but I'm really looking forward to reading these. The first one is The Art of Frugal Hedonism, which is obviously quite a paradoxical term. So this person, guess where I first heard about them? The Slow Home Podcast. I'm not being sponsored by the Slow Home Podcast, but they're awesome. So this is Annie Razor Rowland, and there's a podcast that they did, and they actually replayed it recently as part of the summer series of Slow Home, and it was wonderful, so I'll make sure to link to that as well. So Frugal Hedonism, it's about how to live an awesome, amazing, wonderful life by still being really frugal, not having to spend your money on everything. So I really can't wait to dive into this. I think it's going to be great. On the podcast, Annie gave an example of, you know, it's the afternoon, you're going to have an apple. Why don't you take your apple out, sit in the sunshine, just, you know, peel it and eat it on the spot. Just look out at the gorgeous surroundings, get the sun on your face, and how much of an indulgence that is, as opposed to what could traditionally be called an indulgence, which would be, you know, going to a cafe or, you know, insert spend money here, essentially. Obviously, not everyone has access to an outside and shining sun all the time. It's just one example. It's about finding things that are simple but feed your soul without having to cost money. So I think that, again, is going to tie in very nicely with what I'm trying to do. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then this one, such a pretty cover. It's hardcover and it's got these beautiful colours on it. So this is First We Make the Beast Beautiful by Sarah Wilson. Some people may know Sarah Wilson's name in association with the I Quit Sugar books and program and whatnot, so it's the same Sarah. So this book, though, is about anxiety and mental illness, and that's the beast that the title is referring to. So Sarah talks, I haven't read it yet, but I cannot wait, talks about, anxiety and quitting sugar, but then how the two come together and how you can live a wonderful life. So the back of it says, "This journey is what I do now. I bump along in fits and starts on a perpetual path to finding better ways for me and my mate, anxiety, to get around. It's everything I do." So it's about living with anxiety and how it just is and how it's life. And last week I spoke a lot about anxiety and mental health and how we should destigmatize it. And I had lots of lovely messages both in the Ravelry thread as well as personal messages. And I just really thank everyone who reached out. And to anyone else who wasn't able to or didn't feel they wanted to, that's fine too. Like I said, we really need to destigmatize it. It's not, you know, what some people consider it to be. So I cannot wait to read this either. It's too many things to do, too many books to read. Quit my job. Oh, I wish I could. Bring on lotto wins and I could just sit and read, and if there's not an audio version, I could pay the author to come and read to me. Give them a nice cup of tea. That'd be all right, wouldn't it? Yeah. But anyway, back to anxiety and mental health. So, as I mentioned last time, I have anxiety and depression. I also have PTSD. And then I also have my rheumatoid arthritis. And I mentioned last time that, you know, society, refer to physical ailments as something that's acceptable and mental ailments aren't. I really wanted to clarify, because with chronic conditions, that's something people in society often don't recognise either. The article I linked to last time where it talks about having enough spoons, that is on a website called butyoudontlooksick.com, and that's a common thing. I think people who have chronic pain conditions, people might go, but you don't look sick, what are you talking about? So I really wanted to clarify that, you know, that's another aspect of where destigmatizing is needed, as opposed to, you know, someone breaks their leg, everyone's like, oh, you poor thing, of course you can't work. But if someone calls in sick, you know, my insert illness here is playing up, I just can't move properly, like, oh, well, you don't look sick. So yeah, I think that's another area where, you know, more understanding and destigmatizing is needed. You think? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes. Lots of books there, lots of things to think about. As I said, there'll be links to all of those in the show notes, and if you've got any questions about any of them, do let me know. Yeah, as I said, I haven't read these last couple. Sorry. But the others I obviously already have. So yeah, if you've got any questions, let me know. And I'd be more than happy to chat about it. Or if you want to comment in the Ravelry thread if you want to, if there's anything you wanted to say, that would be great too. I think that, yeah, I think one of these will be next. I'm still making my way through Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I think I've got about 6 hours to go of that because it's like a 30-hour book, so it's quite good value. And yes, so much more in it than the movie that I'd forgotten about, so it's been very enjoyable. But yes, I think might bring one of these with us to the cafe, although I'd rather bring my knitting. Oh, it's so hard. So hard. Rather bring my knitting to the cafe.
Oh,
yeah.
Bring the knitting.
Yeah, it's easier because then you don't want to get food. Knowing me, I'll spill food on my book. Yeah. Okay, with that, I think we're done.
Good.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, YarnderMum?
Have a lovely day, everybody.
Indeed, yes. And I'll put some photos of us at the cafe at the end here so you can see what YarnderMum has, all her lovely ice cream.
Oh, yes. I love ice cream.
It's your favourite food, isn't it?
Mm.
Pretty much staple food group for you.
I do eat other stuff.
Occasionally.
Yeah. Who's the mother here?
On that note, everyone,
Have a lovely day.
have a wonderful day, whatever you are doing. We will see you very soon. Happy crafting. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Love you all.
There you go. See, you're all nice and
The
red.
lady in red is dancing with me, cheek to cheek.
And luckily, I'd already pressed record, so now we've got the performance.
I thought you were being, I was being conned.
But now you've given this joy to everyone.
That's right. I might take my lipstick off
Why?
just to be a nuisance.
I think you're stuck with it for now.
I
So
am.
nicely with your outfit.